Paula, I think we're good to go. It's 5:30.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paula Johnson, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's forum. This forum is a discussion between community members and members of law enforcement and local elected officials with respect to concerns and questions about policing and the future of policing in our communities. So I'd like to welcome all of our attendees and certainly all of the participants in this discussion tonight. And let me just say a word about who is with us this evening and how we will proceed with our discussion. First of all, I'd like to say that this conversation is part of a series of events where the Syracuse and upstate New York community have been focusing on issues of race relations with respect to interactions with the local authorities, communities, in law enforcement, as well as in our systems of government. And so this has been a collaboration between the Onondaga County Bar Association, Syracuse University College of Law, several community organizations, nonprofit organizations as well as a very helpful sponsorship by Bond, Shinnick, and King, who have provided resources and support for this series. So we thank Bond, Shinnick, and King, as well as our other co-sponsors and collaborators in this program. For our guests this evening, for our guest speakers this evening, we have Onondaga County County Sheriff Gene Conway. Thank you for being here, Sheriff Conway. We have Syracuse City Deputy Mayor Sharon Owens. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Owens, for being here with us. We also have Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner, who is with us, DeWitt Police Chief Chase Bilodeau, and Camillus Police Chief Thomas Winn, and Liverpool Police Chief Gerald Unger. So we welcome all of our participants. Now I'd like to say a word about how we will engage in this dialogue this evening. And that is several members of our community organizations have worked with the Racial Justice Committee to provide questions on the topics that we presented to our speakers. And as we mentioned to them, the main topics this evening are going to be on issues having to do with the allocation or reallocation, as it were, of funds to community-based services, recruitment and mental health issues as that relates to assessment and promotion of members of law enforcement, the acquisition and use of military equipment and weaponry with respect to law enforcement, the use of the Giglio list, which has to do with a list that is required to be maintained for police officers who have known to have former violations or excessive force complaints against them. Also, matters related to the demeanor of law enforcement members, de-escalation techniques that may be applied, and the use of force. We also want to discuss the the recently enacted Right to Know Act, which requires that police officers provide those persons who are stopped with information about the reason why they have been stopped by the police, and also provides their name and contact information. And then lastly, one of the issues that we wish to address includes the matter of civilian review boards and accountability boards. And so with those topical areas in mind, the members of the different community organizations have helped to generate a list of questions that we hope to engage in with the speakers this evening. Some for each of our speakers, and some will be directed at particular speakers. But let me also mention who those members are who were so helpful in providing the list of questions that we will be discussing this evening. From the Racial Justice Committee, let me introduce Paula Mallory Engel, who is the president of the Onondaga County Bar Association. Let me also mention Jeff Yanadis, who is the executive director of the Onondaga County Bar Association. My colleague at Syracuse University College of Law, Professor Suzette Melendez, is with us, and also Barrie Gewanter, who is a civil rights advocate in the Syracuse area, Andrew Croom, who is an attorney with Legal Services of Central New York. He is a member of the Syracuse Police Accountability and Reform Coalition, or SPARC. Ranette Releford, who is the administrator for the Citizens Review Board for the city of Syracuse. Charlene Twiggy Billue, who is the president of the Syracuse chapter of the National Action Network, and Kayla Johnson, who is a member of Rebirth Syracuse, which is a community activist organization, as well as a candidate for Syracuse, for the Syracuse Common Council. So again, let me welcome all of you and all of our speakers and all of our attendees. And with that, I'd like to begin so that we can have ample time to hear our discussion. Now, as I said from the outset, the discussion that we're having this evening is designed for us to engage in a dialogue that we hope will provide us with some sense of an understanding of what we endeavor to accomplish by having law enforcement interact with members of our community. And to the extent that we re-envision the way that law enforcement interacts with our community, just what that vision entails. And so as we begin to look at these issues, one of the areas that that we have been particularly concerned about has to do with matters of race and matters of trust within communities of color, particularly Black and Brown communities, and the relation between the police. And most recently, many of you might be aware that former police chief William Bill Bratton, who was the New York City police chief. He was also police chief in Los Angeles and in Boston, has recently written a memoir. And so as I was thinking about this program this evening, I actually was reading some of former Commissioner Bratton's book and some of the reflections that he has made about policing and the need for what might be important for us to consider as we go into this new era where more accountability is expected and required between members of law enforcement. And one of the excerpts from Commissioner Bratton's book stuck out for me, and I want to begin our discussion but with this excerpt. And in his book, he says that among the cops and their union, there is a widespread belief that all police reformers are anti-police. This is wrong-headed. I am a police reformer, and I defy anyone to call me anti-police. But cops and the PBA, I mean, police union, see it differently. And so he says that it is important for us to begin to view the situation and the different perspectives about policing differently. And he calls on us to have the kind of dialogue that we endeavor to have this evening. So I'd like to begin then with the first question, and this is a question I'd like to address to each of our panelists. And that is to ask, first of all, where there has been widespread recognition of the demographic, dearth of law enforcement members of color and a desire to increase those numbers. And so I'd like for each of our panelists to address the demographics within your own areas. And that is, how many law enforcement members of color are there in your higher ranks? Not only the rank and file, but in your higher ranks, meaning those at the levels of sergeant or above, and to the extent that those numbers we would wish to see increased. What are the measures that you are taking so that those numbers indeed will increase within your own areas? Perhaps we'll begin with Deputy Mayor Owens, if you have that information about the issue of the number of members of color in the higher ranks.
So the specific numbers, of course, I would defer to Chief Buckner, but what I will say contextually is that those numbers, as it would be no surprise to anyone on this call, have been very low. I will say that the efforts of the chief, and I think I need to just take a step back, that for coming on the police force, you have to go through a civil service process. There are definitely the positive and the negatives around civil service exams and standardized tests, period. But also in order to move up in the ranks, you also have to take tests as well. To even start the trajectory, you have to take a civil service exam to be a sergeant, for example. And so prior to Chief Buckner coming on, and I believe that he definitely will correct me if I'm wrong, there were none at the rank of sergeant and above. And I do believe we have our first female African-American sergeant on board, and two African-American sergeants now. He will correct me if I'm wrong. And then you don't see anyone until you get to Chief himself.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Owens. So Chief Buckner, if you could expound on that, do you have more concrete figures along those lines?
Yes, thank you for having me. Upon arrival in the agency in December of 2018, the entire command structure of the Syracuse Police Department was all white. There was one gentleman, with the exception of one Native American. That includes approximately 50 sergeants, 20 lieutenants, 6 captains, 4 deputy chiefs, And then at the time, Frank Fowler was the sole African-American within the structure. So that's the position that I walked into. Today, we have 3 African-American sergeants. And then we also have our first civilian non-sworn African-American female supervisor of our records department. We've never had an African-American supervisor in the non-sworn capacity in history. We now have one. It's a difficult thing to sell, regardless of race. Some of the officers are just not interested in moving up in the agency. They prefer to work at the detectives or some of the specialty unit ranks. You always want your best people to move up, but many times those specialty units capture your most talented folks, and they don't want to leave there. We do have what I believe some momentum going into our next promotional list. When we just pulled 3 off of this list, I'm hopeful that more African Americans and other individuals of color will take the promotional exam. So we've had some incremental progress, but we literally started from 0, and it's not a very easy thing to do, because again, you have to voluntarily want those opportunities.
Thank you so much, Chief Buckner and Deputy Mayor Owens. Let me next ask the other members of our panel. Chief Bilodeau.
Paula, thank you for having me tonight. I think I would say for an agency my size, the question is really putting the cart before the horse, to be honest with you, Paula, because I don't have minority candidates to choose from in the rank and file in order to promote. And that comes back to, an issue that we talk about with diversity recruitment and diversity hiring and policing as a whole. So to me, the issue with being able to get candidates in supervisory positions, I have to get them to be officers first. So I have been an advocate for changing to the civil service system personally. I will speak to the difficulties my agency has had. I will use this past week as an example, to be honest with you. I was cautiously optimistic that this new civil service test that had been changed a little bit in an effort to get more minority candidates on the list would perhaps benefit an agency like DeWitt and having minority candidates come through the door. We canvassed the top 4 score groups. We had 40 individuals respond that they were interested in working for the town of DeWitt. Those 40 individuals who came in for pre-screens, I did not have a single minority candidate come in. So it's not working the way the civil service system is set up. I've suggested a system similar to what I would call like a nursing bar situation, where agencies are able to recruit individuals. Specifically, they could take a test to get base competency. You pass a test similar to how a nurse would pass a bar, where you get a base competency, and this individual has now proven they meet the minimum qualifications necessary to at least be a police officer and can be hired. I'm not a fan of the rule of 3, to be honest with you, especially with initial hiring. I think it's an antiquated system, and I don't think with the difficulties we're having in this profession as a whole, it's going to work going forward. I do think we need to speak with our state legislature and get a system that works for 2021.
So thank you for your response, Chief Bilodeau. And I want to make sure that I understand then that insofar as the numbers themselves, are you saying that there are no members in your department at the rank of sergeant or above? And I appreciate your comments about the civil service process, but I want to make sure that I understand just what those demographics are.
That is correct, Paul. We do not have any members sergeant or above. I have one black male officer who is actually still in the academy. He was hired this year, and one Hispanic officer. Those are everyone else would be a white officer, male and female.
Mm-hmm. And out of the size of what is the size of your entire department?
We were authorized for 44 officers. We currently have 43 officers.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. And I think we'll come back to some of the other issues that you raised concerning the civil service exam and process as we go on. Could I next ask for Chief Winn to respond? Is Chief Winn with us? Yes.
Yes, thank you for having me. I could not agree more with the Deputy Mayor and Chief Bilodeau. They eloquently described the problems we're all facing. Our agency over the last 4 or 5 years assisted the New York State Department of Civil Service with developing the new test. And we're having the same issues. We can't get to any minority applicants because of the way the system works. So Chief Bilodeau is correct. The system needs to be fixed in order to hire minority applicants in order to promote down the road, which we can't do right now.
And so Chief Winn, thank you for your response. And so what are the numbers in your department?
We have 28 sworn. There's myself as the chief, a captain and lieutenant are the command staff, 5 sergeants, 1 is a female, and then we have 1 Hispanic officer and 1 Ukrainian officer, but no applicants or officers of color.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for your response. Chief Unger.
Yep, thanks for having me, Paula. And, like Chief Winn,
Yes, thank you.
The problem with the civil service, it's just in the way it works and the way to get to the officer. Currently, there's 2 sergeants and myself, the administrative staff. Department size, we have 15 sworn officers, of which 1 is a Native American.
Okay, thank you so much, Chief Unger. And what is the size of your department?
15 sworn officers.
15, sorry, thank you. All right, thank you for that. And Chief Conway, I think we have not heard from you.
Good evening. My numbers are more fluid. A year ago, this time I had probably 75 more deputies than I have tonight. We have probably 700 plus members of the sheriff's office through the 4 departments. Total through those departments, I would probably have close to 15 members that are minorities. Highest ranking in our correction department is a lieutenant. Highest ranking at the moment in my custody would be a lieutenant, although my chief is Hispanic. And in the police department, highest ranking would be at the rank of sergeant. So again, you've already heard the theme, the frustration with our ability to hire this antiquated, out-of-date civil service system that dates back to, I think, the 70s, that we really locally have never been able to move civil service off of. Just clearly is an impediment, is a hurdle to be able to attract people to the job without requiring them to, quote, score on an exam, score within a category that we can reach them by civil service law, and then of course have the 1 of 3 rule, which I think maybe Chief Buckner could speak to, compared to throughout the country, is just so regressive when it comes to hiring candidates, whatever their level of experience is or whatever their level of capability is. So it's extremely frustrating.
Well, thank you for that, Sheriff. And so each of you has, in some manner, criticized the civil service process and exam. But before talking about that, even more specifically, what I would like to ask about is, before someone even entertains the civil service exam, what type of recruitment do you do in order to enlist others who might be interested in joining the police within any of your jurisdictions? And as part of that question is also how expansive and creative, I guess I would say, is your recruitment effort. And with respect to that, we know that in a number of police departments, and the ones that, those of you who are representing your departments are, no exception to this, that many of your members have typically have backgrounds in the military. And as we are beginning to re-envision law enforcement, we're looking to see how effective people who might have other backgrounds can come into policing as a way to interact with communities, diverse communities, and bring a diverse set of skills to the enterprise of the profession of policing. That could include, backgrounds in social services or just other fields, other types of educational backgrounds. So I'd like for each of you to also talk about what are your recruitment efforts, how expansive, how creative, what is the outreach that's being done so that you might indeed interest those who come from different communities and different backgrounds that are not typically found in law enforcement. Let me begin with Chief Unger. What kinds of measures are you all taking in order to try to enlist people's interest?
Well, my situation is unique other than the rest of the departments due to our size. We don't do any recruitment. We primarily just go off civil service list. We have a low turnover here. Our junior guy has 12 years on the job. So as far as us actively, aggressively trying to get people, to entice to take the test, for us, it really doesn't happen.
So that there aren't any sort of overtures in the community to let people know about the profession so that they might become knowledgeable and interested in joining?
Not at this point. One thing we're seeing is, and I'm sure the other chiefs have seen as well, is recruitment now is almost at an all-time low. I teach at different academies within this county and other counties. And it's very, discerning that you go to an academy and there's 6 students in the academy to fill positions, in which of those 6 people may not be qualified. It's right now, it's a true test in order to get the recruitment. And I know for us, we have to come up with a different plan because of, the ambition of young people to come into the profession. It's become very difficult.
All right, let me ask others on our panel if you can talk about the specific efforts that you are trying to take. Chief Bilodeau, are there measures that you are taking in order to inform members about the possibilities of work in law enforcement, particularly to diverse communities?
Yeah, I mean, we do a number of different efforts. I think recruitment starts locally with positions like an SRO position and things like that at a very young age, and having those positive interactions with young individuals. I think in today's day and age, you have to have a social media presence. So I think that your social media posts about both the civil service system and tests that are coming up, as well as job opportunities, you have to have that kind of presence in 2021. We do a number of community outreach, and we have engaged partnerships with OCC, Lemoyne College, SU, and then other community organizations in regards to specific minority outreach. We have engaged with organizations like the 100 Black Men of Syracuse, different organizations like that, in order to get the word out and build those partnerships and relationships. Again, the struggle with an agency, my size, and I think as Chief Unger just said, is that when you're only hiring 1 to 2 officers a year, which is our average, if I recruit an individual, a good candidate, I meet at a job fair up at OCC or a job fair at some other location or other type of recruiting activity, and I talk to them about DeWitt, and I have them do a couple ride-alongs with DeWitt, and they seem really interested. But the civil service test isn't given for 6 months or more. And then they take the test, and it takes another 6 months for their score to be out. So now I'm a year from where this individual was interested in working for my organization. And then I'm not hiring for another 6 months. So in that time, perhaps they get picked up by another organization. Again, I think that we have to have the ability to directly recruit people, have them take a test within a timely manner, and then be employed by my agency at the same time I have the openings. So those are some of the struggles we're having, but we do engage with communities and do different types of activities, but I have never seen a direct benefit where those type of recruiting measures relate to someone coming back and working for my agency. In regards to the timing, doesn't seem to ever work out.
All right, thank you for your answer. And it seems that there are some efforts that you are doing outreach into different places, such as schools and other areas. Let me ask Deputy Mayor Owens, what is your office doing in order to do outreach to increase diversity in the force?
Again, so I will give an overview, and again, Chief Buckner can peel the onion apart a little bit more. But generally, to Chief just spoke, outreach to different community partners. We too work with the 100 Black men. We too work with our individuals within our neighborhood organizations. I think what I'm most excited about is a new, and I don't want to steal the chief's thunder, but a new initiative with PSLA Fowler that we are going to be engaging in that we're calling Junior Academy. Again, when you look at police and fire in the city of Syracuse in the civil service process, you can become take the test for a fire to become a firefighter at 18. And many of our young people graduate at 17 or 18 or 19 years old. And so you can now almost have a direct line after taking that civil service test if you score high enough in order to continue in the process. For the police department, you have to be 20 and a half years old. So there is a gap in that period. So what we're looking at with PSLA Fowler, who already has a CTE program around public safety, both police and fire, is to partner with them to provide opportunities for them to work as interns with the police department. And in that way, we're able to help them understand policing, get better idea about what policing is about, develop the relationships on both ends, vice versa. And so we're really excited about that option of another way to, as stealing the chief's term, is grow our own fruit from the kids that are already, if they're in a public services academy, they're already interested in the idea of either police or fire. So we want to engage them very early on in the high school.
Okay, so
and Chief can speak more to it.
Well, I do want to make sure that the question, as I asked it before, is something that you all are responding to also, because it isn't just about the diversity, recruitment in terms of, persons of color who might be interested in the force, or people of a variety of backgrounds who would make for a diverse police force. But also, even more specifically, people who might come to the police force who have different skills, different educational backgrounds, people who may be coming from areas other than those that are, say, former military members, so that if we are re-envisioning the police, that we would look to people who have other types of skills, other types of backgrounds beyond those that are former military members. Now, certainly as members of the police force, those things you would consider to be important. But we are also seeing in an age in which we're looking to see skills where de-escalation is important to the policing effort and the safety effort with respect to the community, that there could be other people who have professional backgrounds that you also might do outreach to. And I'd like to know if there is a direct or concerted effort to do outreach to people such as those, people who may have backgrounds in psychology or social services or social work, other types of protective services where they work with certain types of communities or the public in different ways, and how that can be important to the mission of public safety for those people who would join the police force. So let me ask some of the other members of the group, if you are doing things that are directly related to outreach and including members in your force who come from different backgrounds beyond those that are from the armed forces? Sheriff Conway, I don't think that you've responded. Are you doing something
No.
specifically to look at people with other backgrounds?
Yeah, yes, we are. I'd like to think that we probably have one of the more robust recruitment programs that we've had over time. You know, we have a community relations unit, but I found that some of our best people for recruitment purposes are people that are within our main mission. And so we look to those people and the groups that they belong to, not connected to work, but connected off work, and try to maximize, obviously, that opportunity that they may have and bring along the role of the sheriff's deputy in speaking to that group. I'll give you an example such as Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We engage with them on a regular basis, and whether it's a setting for a picnic, whether it's a giveaway during the holidays, we have several members who volunteer their time to participate in these events with the sole purpose of giving us or showing us in a different light than what some of these, in this situation, some of these kids may experience otherwise. But I think it's more important that it's that member of the department that is already a part of that organization, that already has trust within that organization, that then wants us as an agency to fully participate in whatever it is to support them. Going back to your comment about the military, in thinking of this, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I have to believe that probably the majority over time of minority people we have in our department actually came from the military. And however that happens, whatever that reason is, that is the situation. I know that the stigma of, well, you look for people with military backgrounds. We don't look for people with military backgrounds, but because of it being a quasi-military organization historically, those people seem to gravitate more to taking the exam. But again, I know that there have been many of minority members of the Sheriff's Department that actually have been members of the military as well.
Yes, so, you know, as we're talking about this and the matter of re-envisioning what policing looks like, as we have seen, for instance, from former President Obama's task force on re-examining law enforcement, the recommendations from that task force indeed recommended that we look beyond those members and envisioning the police force as akin to a militaristic organization. And so the question is going to remain pertinent as long as we have, few members who come from outside of, that particular area, as opposed to something that is more broad-based, so that people bring a variety of skills and perspectives to the work of policing. So it's not clear to me that the efforts to go outside of that, the typical skill set and backgrounds is something that has been engaged in a very, concrete way. And perhaps that is something that each of the members on our panel will want to engage in with some, greater activity along those lines. I'd like to ask the next question, and that is, with respect to the question of the Right to Know Act, and this is something, Deputy Mayor Owens, that particularly pertains to the Syracuse area. Now, the Right to Know Act was passed, I think it was October of 2020. And the Syracuse Common Council passed this law that requires that the police officers explain the reasons why someone has been stopped, and also requires that those individuals be provided with business cards that include the officer's name, their rank, their identification number, and information where a complaint can be made, and also requires that data be maintained about police stops. Now, there's been some difficulty with the implementation of the right to know law, and I wonder if you would explain to us whether or not those issues have been resolved. There was an issue with the business cards with the police, where initially it had the full names of the police officers. The police union rejected that and said the police officer's full name should not be there, and that was supposed to be corrected. And I'd like to know if you can explain to us what is the status of the implementation of this law at this moment.
All police officers have business cards. The law required that the cards identify the officer. So the officer's last name is on the card, and what is specific to the identifying factor. And again, these are questions that Chief Buckner can really expound upon, but what is identifiable on the card is not a badge number. In our system, it is a specific number that almost like an employee ID number that is assigned to each officer. That number is what is the number that is on the card. And as required by the law, on the reverse side is the information relative to our ops office, Office of Professional Standards, otherwise known to most people as Internal Affairs, as well as the CRB. Every officer has those cards and are required to use them as required by the law. They have received the training necessary for that process. Also, as part of the our requirement and obligation for the law, we have to begin to post data regarding the stops according to the law. That information is being tallied. So that information comes through a conduit, which is housed at the Onondaga County. So it took some coordination with the city and the county to be able to generate those reports. And the first series, the first report on those stops, Chief Buckner, you're going to have to help me here, I believe is the 1st of July.
Correct. We're currently closing out that second quarter that we'll be able to provide that information, which will be our first official reporting in the first week of July.
And how does the public get access to that so that our attendees can know how they can have access to that data once it's available?
So since the beginning, I'm sorry, Chief, since last year, we have our police reform portal, web portal. I can put that, put that link in the chat. And that web portal is where that information will be housed and accessible to the public and the police website.
Thank you. I think that would be very helpful to all of our attendees to have that information. And we will also post it on the OCBA website when we have that link. It would be important for people to know that that the public has access to that information and how to obtain it. I'd like to ask with respect to the other jurisdictions. So thank you both for your responses. I would like to ask the other officers as well. While Syracuse has a right to know act, do you have an analog to that in your own jurisdictions? And if you do not, would that be something that you would adopt? Chief Unger, would you like to begin?
Yeah, and as the law goes, we have all our officers have cards with their last names on there. Because we are a small agency, we go by the badge number. Anytime that information is requested, we have it be a log of what we keep. As with the city of Syracuse, anytime that we have those, and there's any discrepancy, we do put it onto our homepage on the computer.
And do you also provide information where people, if they have a complaint, where they're clear as to how they make that and where they would make that complaint?
Yes, ma'am. Within that, I mean, any complaint, and there's a procedure, they would call the police department and we would take it from there to review with the citizen if there is a complaint against an officer.
Okay, so that information is all on the business card?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Chief Winn, what is your process with respect to right to know and mechanisms for community members to be able to register a complaint?
So we're already doing some of the things that the city's doing under the right to know, specific to searches conducted during traffic stops and other encounters. Our policy dictates that we must get consent why it's being videotaped, whether with a body camera or a car camera or any other camera. We also teach our officers the Verbal Judo Institute tactical approach to traffic stops. And part of that is they have to identify themselves and the department and the reason for the stop when they approach the motorist. Our officers do carry business cards. They do not have information on making a complaint on those business cards. They do hand them out when requested or if they see a need. And to make a complaint, our complaint process is on our website, and it's also available here at the police station in plain view to the public.
So thank you for that. Thank you for that response, Chief. Now, I do want to understand, though, when you said your officers carry business cards, do they hand them out automatically, or you used the phrase if they see a need? Could you explain what you mean by that?
Yes, it is not automatic. There are certain circumstances where citizens ask for the card or some form of identification. By policy, they're required to give that. And if the police officer thinks that the motorist or other person they're engaged with would need further information, they supply the card to that person.
So the individual would not know that they have a right to the card. That would be up to the discretion of the officer to determine whether or not to hand out the business card?
Correct.
So you can imagine that someone who isn't aware of that would perhaps leave that encounter without knowing that indeed they are entitled to get that information. And also the information about how they might make some sort of complaint about the interaction or the encounter. So would it give you a basis for reevaluating that policy where it might become more automatic, so that in any encounter with the police, a citizen would get the information from the officer who has stopped them?
Yeah, we certainly would look at that in conjunction with our staff and certainly in conjunction with our police union. It's a topic that I think has merit, and we certainly will look at that going forward.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Chief Bilodeau, what is your response to the right to know laws as it relates in your area?
So our police commission did go over the specific topic as part of their response to 203. It was brought up as part of our response. They looked at our identification procedure policy. We did make some amendments to the identification procedure policy. Our officers were already issued business cards, and the business cards have the website of the town of DeWitt clearly on the front. And upon visiting the website, there's a tab right under the homepage. It says commendations or complaints. So it's pretty easy to visit the website and determine how to make a complaint. The business cards themselves do not specifically have directions. They simply have a website, but that's because that's how they existed in the past. We felt there's some amendments to the existing policy that although business cards were encouraged in the way the policy was written before by making some changes and making it mandatory for them to be handed out upon request. That given with the fact that we don't have any non-uniform patrol officers, so all of our patrol officers wear uniforms with name tags, and every citizen interaction is mandated to be recorded by body camera. We've never had a situation where a complaint came in or where there was any question about what officer was on a call where we were not able to simply pull up either the GPS data or the body camera footage and very quickly determine what officer had that interaction. We discussed all these things with the police commission and a few amendments to the policy mandating they have to be given upon request and encouraging them to be given out on any other interaction that the officer wants. That coupled with our only uniform response and body camera, they felt was sufficient in their response to the right to know. We do track in regards to the tracking of data as part of our, our accreditation process. We're required to do a bias-based policing review every year. We do track stop data to include race, age, gender, reason for stop on every vehicle and traffic and citizen stop that the agency does.
And your reports also are available for the public. Is there a particular site or link that you would like to share with us, or just tell us where members of the public would be able to get this information tracking encounters with the police?
So we don't have those posted. We do present them in a public meeting annually at the police commission. So it's a public meeting. We don't currently have the reports. We do an annual report, which is a much larger summation of all the activity of police department posted currently.
And when is that presented, your annual report?
Sorry, the annual reports are on the website. So they're just on the Town of DeWitt Police website. The bias-based policing review and other reviews that we do, the annual use of force review, pursuit analysis, and other reviews that are required under our accreditation process are typically presented in February of any given year. So we do a full review of the previous year and present those at the February Police Commission meeting, which is open to the public.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff Conway, I think we haven't asked this question for you. And with respect to the right to know policy, what is your implementation of that?
Well, ours would be very similar to what's already been expressed by Chief Winn, Chief Unger, and certainly Chief Bilodeau, as far as what we do, what we have in place, how people can access the number of complaints we've received. We certainly have on our website opportunities for people to come in or complain about our actions. Our officers are clearly marked with their names. They do carry cards, but like the other chief said, we don't hand them out to each and every person. They may be handed out if needed or if requested, but we feel comfortable in the process that we have in place for people to make a complaint should that be the situation, and for the public to know how many complaints we receive, certainly on an annual basis.
So then the public would then have the onus is on members of the public to find your information on your web pages, and so perhaps you might consider making this something that is automatic as opposed to on the discretionary judgment of the officer, so that any citizen or person who has an interaction with the police would have that information at their disposal at the time of that encounter. So thank you all for your responses along those lines. The next area I'd like to ask
Professor Johnson,
about.
Paula?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Before
Yes.
you go on, we're monitoring some of the comments and questions in the chat. I was wondering if I could voice some of those from the community members that are watching via Facebook. So they're not necessarily coming in this chat.
Yes.
And I also wanted to know, I know we have a series of questions. There's one or two questions that our watchers have posed. You can let me know when you're perhaps ready for that. But some of the comments that we've received on the various topics, refer to the right to know practice. And I'm not sure what areas the comments are coming from per se, but most citizens would not necessarily be aware of policies that officers must adhere to. Discretion may create room for obscurity with regard to these, the right to know practices. Also, going back to a different topic, the concept of recruiting those with military backgrounds, according to another community member, creates a military mindset in which the community is then seen as the enemy, as it's written. There was another citizen who stated that in their area, their jurisdiction, police officers are not showing their business cards, despite the fact that that's the stated practice, and not wearing their body cams. There are some other questions related to the unions. And the comment is, it is difficult to disassociate efforts to build trust between police and communities with the heavy-handed rhetoric and activities of police unions in our area. What work is being done to ensure police unions are not undermining efforts to build up police community trust? So I'm going to throw that one question out there. I know you might have it in your long list of questions, but you let me know if you're ready for any others. But just some comments from the community that's watching.
Yes, thank you for that, Suzette. And they relate to the conversation we've just been having. And as I suggested to several of our members who aren't handing out business cards automatically, that as you've heard from these comments, that may be something that you all will want to consider doing and adopting that practice, because otherwise members of the public will not be aware that they're entitled to that information. But the question that was raised, and with respect to unions, is one that we might address now as that comes up, in terms of how that might be an impediment to any of these policies that would be helpful in terms of redirecting or re-envisioning policing. How are police unions thwarting the kinds of efforts that we've been talking about, and what measures ought be taken so that that does not create obstacles to reestablishing the police force? Why don't I begin with Chief Winn? I'd like to take you all in different orders. Chief Winn, what is the role of the union in your area, and how might these efforts be thwarting what we envision as a more expansive type of police force? One that is not, as you just heard from one of our comments, necessarily militaristic, or in other ways subverting the goals.
More recently, as opposed to years past, our police union has been working with us to try to embrace change in law enforcement, to make it better, to make community relations better. So we're not seeing pushback from the union on a lot of topics right now. They're coming to the table with things that are mandatory subjects of negotiation, and negotiating and talking, listening, and really communicating. And they understand the need for some change in our profession, and they're most willing to help us do that. So we are not seeing that pushback that years ago we probably would have.
So you're finding a more cooperative relationship with the unions in terms of the kinds of issues that we're describing?
Yes, and I attribute that to a relatively young police force. With retirements and people leaving for various reasons, we have a young police force that is more open to change, and I think more willing to listen.
Mm-hmm. Chief Unger, how would you respond?
We're kind of in line with Chief Winn said. There's zero pushback from the union at this time. The union is aware there needs to be a change in police and the community, to build community trust. There's been a lot of training that the union has actually came up with that they would prefer to do in order to help build the trust and look at the implicit bias and look at the de-escalation. They also see the need that there has to be some progressive work done.
And are you getting responses from the public as to how they perceive the relationship between the unions and the force?
Well, not really, only for the fact that we are a small, community-oriented police force. We're not, like I said earlier, we only have 15 sworn members. What I have seen in change is as was mentioned earlier with verbal judo, that the temperature of an incident can change, with the officer rather than escalating it. Let's de-escalate it. Our numbers of complaints have actually gone down tremendously in the implementation of the body cameras. Our complaints have gone down almost 80% in the last year and a half.
And to what do you attribute that?
A lot of it comes from the use of the body camera. It takes away the he said, she said factor. But also the training has taken, the implicit bias training, and, people realizing that, yeah, maybe I do have a prejudice, but I never realized it. So it gives them the mental fortitude to go into things with an open mind when you're dealing with people from different backgrounds and cultures.
Thank you so much. Now, Deputy Chief Owens, I'd like to direct that question to you then on this question of the role of unions and how they might hinder some of the goals that you have for re-envisioning the police force in Syracuse.
Paula, sometimes I feel like a deputy chief as much as I talk to Chief Buckner. The Syracuse Police Department union went through a major change just in its recent election. And so the longstanding police union representative, Jet Piedmont, was replaced by the current president. And we're in a relationship building phase, I would say. Jeff Piedmont had been on the force for, my goodness, over 25 years. To what some of the other panelists said, being there a long time, having certain being used to doing things certain ways, in any profession, people get used to that. Now we have a new individual coming on as the president, and we're feeling each other out. He's making the rounds to meet. I haven't had I haven't met with him yet myself, but he and I are committed to getting together to meet with each other to talk about community and police relations and what his vision is and what my vision is. And so it's hard for me to say a lot because I have not met the new president, but I know the chief meets with him regularly.
So without perhaps being able to say a lot, maybe you could share with us some of the priorities that you have. If you see this new relationship as something that might be forward moving or forward looking, what are the kinds of things that you think you would like to see happen with a new leadership in the union so that we have the kind of policing that we want to have in the community?
Well, continuing absolutely to build on the message that we've been sending since I've been sitting in this seat, that we all are here and in jobs that are developed and to serve the community. In this case, it is the residents of the city of Syracuse. We all are public servants. And we all should be engaging with every member of a community in that fashion. With the highest level of professionalism, engagement, understanding all the policies that govern how our officers are to perform their jobs and conduct their engagement with community members. I'd love to see continued community building activities between our officers and the community, continued dialogues. We talked about recruitment, efforts to continue to recruit. And you brought up an excellent point, Paula, that I took a note about, and really recruiting. And when we think about diversifying, it really has been along race and gender. But when you think about what you said about diversifying in professional areas, it was a great point. How can the union be instrumental in this? Because all of our lives, it may feel like we're at work 24/7, but we're not. So what are our experiences outside of the work environment that can really help us tap into other professionals, other means of communicating with each other, other means of just ensuring that we continue to build on what we're working on now is my vision and my hope.
Thank you very much. I think that Chief Bilodeau, did you want to add to that discussion? What is your relationship or perception about the union and how they affect the goals that you have for the force?
I think I would echo similar lines of Chief Winn and Chief Unger, and I think that the three of us are lucky enough. I think, in all honesty, when you have a union that's smaller, it is easier to engage with the individuals. When you're union president, that's not their full-time job, that they're a patrol officer and they're doing that. I think the smaller union is a little more focused on just the employment aspect of it. I find our union's focus is contract negotiations and things like that. And I certainly don't feel like we have any type of a contentious relationship. I speak with the union president regularly, and I think that they're very on board with wanting to be a professional organization that's well respected within the community. And I certainly don't feel like there's any kickback along policies and practices in regards to the way we do our job. Their focus is more on the employment. So I think there's an advantage. A union is not that much different than a bureaucracy or a government, right? Sometimes a little bit smaller is an advantage, and you can get things done on a more face-to-face level easier. So I think we're just lucky enough, the size of our organization, where we certainly I don't feel like we have any kickback from the union, or that they don't work with us with our community policing efforts.
All right, thank you all for discussing that matter. I'd like to go to another area now, and I'd like to ask for Sheriff Conway, if you would respond to this, and that is with regard to an independent civilian review board. One of the benefits, of course, of having an independent citizens review board is that there can be transparency and accountability for law enforcement departments. Now, currently, there is no civilian review board connected with the sheriff's department. And I'd like to know your response to that, and whether or not you would perceive it to be beneficial to have a citizens review board that also encompassed the sheriff's department or best practices along the lines of what citizens review boards are set in place to do. Could you comment on that area, please?
Yeah, certainly. I'll just remind everyone that when I took office, the Justice Center Oversight Committee was formed, and to this date, it is the only oversight committee of a jail in New York State. Not only did I welcome that, I embraced it and have supported it throughout my term as sheriff. That is in conjunction, or in addition to, the grievance process that's in place from the Commission on Correction, that obviously oversees all the operations of all the jail facilities throughout New York State. So we are unique in that we actually have two systems in place when it comes to our correctional facilities. I'd also like to remind everyone that my position is unique in that I am the only law enforcement leader, local, state, federal, of which I'm elected. Every other police chief, every other superintendent, every other leader of law enforcement is appointed by someone, whether it be a mayor, a governor, the president of the United States. So my actual oversight is the voters, in this case of Onondaga County. And every 4 years, those voters determine whether or not the sheriff himself either has been doing a good job or hasn't been doing a good job. And they then make that determination at the polling places as to whether I or whoever the sheriff is should continue in place. So I feel that truly is the oversight of the sheriff's office each 4 years.
That's a very good point, Sheriff Conway, and that is that the voters, decide about office holders. In as much as that is the case, though, when it comes to individual or even group interactions with police where there might be problematic matters, a review board might be a forum or a mechanism where those kinds of complaints could be addressed. So as I understand it, the review board process applies to the jail only, but not more expansively to all of your office. It seems to me that those things are not mutually exclusive, and I wonder if a review board might be helpful along the lines of what we've been discussing in the other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I personally don't think it's necessary. Certainly in my position, there is a public safety committee within the county legislature. And so that is another avenue in addition to the county legislators who serve obviously constituents throughout the city and Onondaga County. So I think those are layers in place that certainly have the opportunity to bring to my attention or bring to those other elected leaders the problems or the situations or the solutions. So at the moment, I don't feel it's necessary.
Thank you very much for your response for that, Sheriff Conway. Now, I would like to, continue in this vein, and that is, where there are civilian police boards. Sometimes they have been plagued by a lack of cooperation by members of law enforcement to provide the kind of information that is being requested. And so I'd like to ask you all in terms of helping to make those entities effective really relies on your cooperation in providing requested information, in coming before those boards, and that is not always the case. So I wonder if you could speak to what is it that you envision for a more responsive relationship to the Citizens Review Board, so that they can do their work in the manner in which is envisioned, so that they can hold officers who ought to be held accountable for whatever kinds of complaints come before them. What about cooperation with the Citizens Review Boards? Let's see, who have we started with before? I'd like to start with maybe Chief Winn. What is your view about that?
We currently do not have a civilian review board. I also, along with the sheriff, don't believe it's necessary. In a non-COVID year, we would handle approximately 15,000 calls for service in our community. Out of those 15,000 calls and other contacts with people in our community, about 20 complaints come in about police officers. Our professional standards do a wonderful job investigating those complaints. We also have oversight from our Public Safety Committee on the town board, as well as the town supervisor and other members of the town board, to make sure that these complaints are handled appropriately. So I don't see the need in our small community with the number of police officers we have to have that type of oversight.
Deputy Mayor Owens, there have been issues regarding responsiveness to the civilian complaint review board, I'm sorry. And what is the response from your office about that?
Paula, I'm actually very encouraged by the relationship that Chief Buckner has created with Ranette as the administrator of the CRB. The mayor's executive order had provisions within it regarding our timeliness and response, our processes by which we would interact as far as meeting regularly, which Ranette and Chief Buckner do. I think it's a monthly basis, but I might be off on that. Also, the process by which documentation is shared between the two entities. The chief also restructured our Office of Professional Standards to appoint Susan Izzo in charge. They are doing phenomenal work in making sure that we are cleaning up any backlogs and that we are absolutely engaging in the following the law that was established between the relationship. Also, there is a working group beyond just Ranette and Chief Buckner that meet on a regular basis to be able to iron out any difficulties that may happen.
Okay. I'd like to bring Suzette back in now because we do have further comments from our attendees, from our audience. Suzette, you want to share some of the comments and questions also that we have from others?
Yes, one comment was that someone stated that the county legislatures do investigate constituent concerns, but that is not a substitute for a civil review board. Further, I guess there are some individuals that are viewing that would like to be able to comment on some of the things that have been said. I'm not sure how you would like to conduct that process, but I will defer to you as a moderator.
Okay. I think that we'll need for Jeff to allow people to be able to speak directly since he is monitoring the tech aspect of this. So if you have the people who are identified, we can have them speak and ask their questions.
Yes, and I also had put one question that was asked by a community member with regard to the police officer at the town of DeWitt and how he will be mentored.
So the question that I see there, yes, there is a question about how is the one Black officer doing in the academy and who will be mentoring him, who will he have as an example. So I wonder if we can get a response about that, Chief Bilodeau.
He's doing excellent in the academy. He's set to graduate. I believe the date's June 25th. If I'm getting my dates right, but it's in about 2 weeks. He'll be graduating from that academy and going on to his field training program. During his time in the academy, he's built multiple relationships with individuals here already. Our lieutenant from CID has been his direct contact during his time in the academy, and I think that's been an excellent mentoring relationship. I hope he has 43 mentors is what I hope. I hope he can look up to all the members and draw from his shift mates and his partner officers and have a good example to set from there. But he'll go through the same field training process just that every other officer goes through, and he'll have officers to rely on.
Beyond your own law enforcement agency, perhaps across jurisdictional lines, there also might be ways in which there can be mentorship, considering that there are no other members of color on your police force. So in addition to what you do inside of your own agency, that might be something that is going to be important while you're also trying to increase those numbers on your force. Suzette, were there other questions that we were going to reach, or maybe Jeff can let us know?
If you'd like to have the ability to ask a question in person, if you can raise your hand, if you're an attendee here, and I will promote you to panelist, you'll be able to ask your question live and in person. I don't see anybody now, Paula.
I'm sorry, say it again, Jeff.
I don't have anybody currently with a question to ask live here, though.
Okay, let me ask if there are any of the community members who would like to ask questions before we go on. We have a few more moments before we're scheduled to finish at 7. I want to make sure that everyone has had an opportunity to get the questions answered that they would like to ask. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up from the panel members. So let me ask the next area, and that has to do with de-escalation. We've seen any number of instances where the question of de-escalation and the use of force has come up. We've seen that on the national basis, and we've also seen it locally. And so we'd like to know just what is your department, your jurisdiction's definition of use of force, so that we can understand what excessive force means when any members of your department go beyond what you perceive to be an appropriate use of force. And the second part to that is what type of de-escalation techniques are your members trained to use so that we might not get to the point where either use of force, whether it's lethal or non-lethal, necessary or excessive, comes into play. So we should talk about this matter of the use of force and how that is envisioned, how it is defined, and how we might minimize its use by other techniques, namely de-escalation techniques. And let me start with the Syracuse Police Department. Deputy Mayor Owens, if you could talk about that in terms of what is your understanding of the meaning of use of force within the Syracuse Police Department as that comes to your office, and what about training for de-escalation so that that won't be such a prominent event throughout our communities, particularly in urban areas?
So when we came on board, we looked at a use of force policy that had been about 20 years old. And so we made some immediate, this is summer of 2019. Since then, we've gone through an extensive revision of our use of force policy. And again, that link that I provided to you all has that draft link use of force policy embedded within it. It really speaks to the sanctity of human life. It really speaks to the opportunities to de-escalate, use of de-escalation techniques in an incident. It is clear as the much more clear than the previous policy was. The previous policy really spoke to what was supervisory responses in the event of use of force. This really gives the officers guidance with regard to what is allowed and not allowed with regard to carrying out the activities that officers are involved in each day, and clearly defines in many different scenarios and sections within that policy what is allowed and what's not allowed, what supervisors are responsible to do in the event that an officer has violated that policy. And there was something else I had that just skipped my mind. We also, through this process of revising our use of force policy, got input from the CRB, got input. It's no secret that we are also being reviewed by the Attorney General's office. They also weighed in on components of our revisions to the use of force policy. So I think we really have gone a long way from what the policy that I knew of when I came on board as deputy mayor, and certainly when Chief Buckner came on board. We have gone from one end of the football field to the other as far as the development and the training required for our officers. And I, of course, will defer to the chief.
Well, thank you for that. But I think that, also within your area, you might be particularly able to answer this discussion about the allocation of resources within law enforcement in the city. And, if we are emphasizing de-escalation, how is that reflected in budgetary matters? How is it reflected in the police budget? How is it reflected in putting necessary resources into other departments or areas that might help to de-escalate matters? Other community organizations, for instance, who might be helpful in those regards. So what are the budgetary priorities that would be consonant with the preservation of life, as you mentioned, and so de-escalation?
So training is a major part of the police budget, and being able to ensure that allocations are there in order to provide that training, whether it be in-house or through consultant training. We have invested in, brought on our director of community engagement as also a mechanism by which we can engage the community and be more proactive. We already have a community policing division that is funded as well through the police department. The chief has also taken a hard look at staffing within the police department and what positions do not need to be occupied by a sworn officer and can be civilianized. So that line of our department in our overall city budget, we have increased the parks department, and we have committed to identifying resources for our diversionary response efforts that we're in conversations with now with multiple stakeholders, including 3 of the chiefs on this call now, around how we address calls for people in crisis in our community around mental health. So we are working through that process. The police budget, it's no secret that the bulk of it is through the salary line for the police force, but there are areas that we are committing to accountability through our body worn camera program to expand that into our sergeants, who are the gatekeepers for engagement and oversight for our officers. Also looking at continued as our commitment was with dash cameras, again, making sure that there is accountability, ensuring that we have funding for the technology ends of our department to ensure that we're able to meet our commitment around transparency, around data. Those are some of the areas.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we're running just up against the hour, but there's one area before we leave that I want to make sure that we have at least raised with each of you, and that is the matter of the Giglio list. And again, this is a requirement that police officers who have had past violations and have been found to use excessive force or otherwise have complaints against them be provided for purposes of civilian review boards or other types of sanctions against those officers, and also so that they are not able to simply move from one police department to another without having that information revealed. And so I'd like to ask you all about your compliance with providing that information, not only so that your own departments know about officers who've had former complaints, but also so that other departments will know, so that officers cannot simply go from one area to another without that information being known. Sheriff Conway, I wonder if you can start to talk about that and compliance with the Giglio rule.
Well, we certainly comply with the Giglio rule, both from the district attorney's end of it, right up through my New York State Sheriff's Association. I believe it's actually law now that that agencies are required to disclose when a candidate is moving from one agency to another, what the background of that candidate is. So we are certainly in full compliance with that.
So that is required for not only other departments, but also for defense counsel when they are raising complaints. So to what extent is your department compliant with that rule?
We supply any requested information that's asked of us for that reason.
Chief Unger.
Yeah, we're also in compliance. Anytime that the information is requested, it is absolutely supplied. A lot of times it's on the recommendation, even if we have questions, it's deferred to the district attorney's office. And as well as when there's transfers, any instance with that officer will actually go on to the next department as well.
Okay. Now we have a question from one of our attendees in relation to this, and that is whether or not sexual assault is a fireable offense within your department. Who can respond to that and let us know specifically? Chief Winn. Is sexual assault a fireable offense in your department?
Well, like in anything in our world, nothing's black and white. If the officer is convicted of a sexual offense, yes, but he or she does have union protection, depending on the circumstances of the sexual assault. But I'd say yes.
Okay. And I'm just going to go across my screen. Deputy Mayor Owens, you said you felt like a deputy chief sometimes. Within the Syracuse Police Department, is sexual assault a fireable offense?
Again, to the point that was just made by the chief, because of a union, they're a union member, there are processes we have to fire. A conviction of a sexual assault is a crime, and the answer would be yes.
But not leading up to conviction, there could be internal investigations which would substantiate those charges. With respect to an internal investigation, would that be a fireable offense?
And an internal investigation leading up to evidence of a sexual assault being committed, yes.
Yes, okay. All right, thank you. Chief Bilodeau?
Yeah, it's not like we have a black and white list of automatic things that an officer will get fired for. So the question's a little gray, but I guess I think if you're just looking for culture and thought process, if I had an internal investigation that led me to believe an officer committed a sexual assault, yes, I would fire them. I think if that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
I don't think any department has a magic list that says, here's the things you get fired for and here's the things you don't. We conduct, if an allegation of misconduct was done, an internal affairs investigation would be completed. And upon those findings, At the town of DeWitt, the chief would have the authority to make a discipline decision. And if whether or not a conviction occurred, if I felt that there was evidence that an officer committed a sexual assault, I would fire that officer.
I think we've heard from all of the chiefs. Chief Buckner, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to what Deputy Mayor Owens has said about sexual assault being a fireable offense within the Syracuse Police Department. Chief Buckner seems to be muted. And as we are beyond the time of our slated time for this program, I want to close by thanking all of the people who are with us on Facebook and who have joined us on this Zoom webinar, and certainly to thank all of the panelists from the area police departments and from the Syracuse Mayor's office to engage in this discussion with us. We know that this is not the end of the discussion that is necessary on these issues, and that we hope that this will be a part of a continuing discussion and also a part of a continuing actions to improve community and law enforcement relations so that we are not viewing each other as enemies, but as part of a whole community, having different needs, having different backgrounds, having different perspectives, but all needing to have the respect and care and concern that we expect from law enforcement. I'd like to thank on behalf of the Onondaga County Bar Association and the entire planning group for this year-long OCBA and Syracuse University College of Law, Bond, Shinnick and King Race and Justice Series. We thank everyone for participating with us this evening for this important discussion for the betterment of all of our community members. Thank you, everyone, and good night to all of you.